Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday. It's myself, Dr. Vanessa, here from Brio Integrative Health, and I'm just looking outside, and it is a gorgeous Sunday afternoon. So, thank you for those of you who are taking valuable time out of your day to join me for this talk. It's much more pleasant outside than it was earlier Tuesday this week when we did part one of this talk on strengthening your first line of defense. And by that, I'm referring to the skin and mucous membranes. So, in the first part, I was just doing some education about the function of those two external structures, especially our skin, our gastric mucosa. And in this portion of the talk, it's going to be more about things you can do to strengthen the skin and mucous membranes, to nourish them. Before I get into the content, I want to thank all of you for voting for Brio in Richmond News, the Best of Richmond 2020 contest. Your support is really incredible, and it's so appreciated from all of us. Also, congratulations to my peers in Richmond, Dr. Romy and Dr. Hella, who also placed. The agenda for today, I should not use that term, it'll remind people of Zoom meetings that they do for work. And this is definitely for leisure, education, hopefully a bit of pleasure. So the plan for today is we're going to talk a little bit about the TCM, or traditional Chinese medicine, view of the lung as it fits into immune health. I've only covered skin and mucous membranes and a little bit of digestive health so far in the earlier portion of this talk. I'm also going to teach the Thymus Thump. This is a really simple move as I tried to play up the thymus gland, something that's not often covered in organ education and meaning in terms of a healthy body. And then lastly, I'm going to break down the digestive process and discuss a little about the different gut and skin healing ingredients or nutrients that you can try to incorporate more of. So, to reinforce the immune system and mucous membrane connection, I did want to highlight the one other system besides the digestive system that's lined with mucous membrane of significance to the immune system, and that is the lung, as well as accompanying structures like the nose and the trachea. These all are lined with mucous membranes. And what mucus does here is it traps smaller particles like pollen. Those of you with seasonal allergies will be very familiar with the effect, as well as smoke. Thankfully, our air quality has improved greatly in the last week. The respiratory epithelium, so the skin of the respiratory system, moistens and protects our airways, which prevents them from drying out and irritation. And skin has a close relationship with the lung. Skin also includes a body hair, which acts like little cilia, little hairs, say in our nose. And what they do in conjunction with the mucus is that it helps sweep the particles trapped in the jelly mucus towards the exit. It shows all those allergens the door. Hair also keeps allergens on the surface at hair's length. skin and all the structures associated with it are part of the exterior part of the body. And the exterior of the body is seen as being ruled by the lungs. Again, I'm coming from a Chinese medicine perspective. How this is because lungs control moisture and sweat on the skin. This is easily illustrated when you're panting and out of breath, say after running to catch a bus or exercising. When you're huffing and puffing, you're likely sweating as well. So not only are your lungs working harder, but your skin is working harder through sweating for temperature regulation. Lastly, the lungs also spread a kind of qi, so that's the life energy. It spreads a very specific kind of qi called wei qi over the entire body. And that's why activities like deep breathing or qigong yoga are helpful. They help spread the breath or the wei qi throughout the rest of the body. And if you're interested in breathing techniques, you can refer back to one of the earliest talks I did on breathing techniques for relaxation and energy. And you can find that in the video library on the YouTube Brio channel or on Facebook as well. Earlier this week, in part one of this talk, I likened skin to armoring. We may not be covered in steel plates like a knight would, but the keratin protein in our skin and also our hair and nails, it imparts water resistance. And this further keeps harmful substances from getting any deeper. Having an intact skin barrier, an intact mucous membrane is really essential for its function. Any weakness or holes in your armor, like skin tears or even tightness, a sign of dryness, allows infectious agents and other unwanted substances from breaching this barrier. So by ensuring regular moisturization to keep the skin barrier supple, especially as we head into this cooler, drier fall weather, in a time when we are washing our hands more than ever, using hot soapy water and even alcohol-based hand sanitizers. This is important to maintain that natural waterproofing and full coat of protection by keeping it well hydrated and moisturized. Some hand cleansers even have moisturizing agents built right in, things like aloe gel or even shea butter. And if your hand sanitizer doesn't have these things, you might actually consider mixing a little bit in, but just be cautious not to dilute the alcohol content below 70% so that it wouldn't be effective as a germicidal agent. Most hand sanitizers are using alcohol levels of 90 and above, so there's a little bit room to dilute. I mentioned hydration and moisture earlier. They are related but separate aspects of skin health. So both adequate fluid consumption, that can be plain water, of course, herbal teas, watery foods, soups and broths, those all count, as well as healthy fats. So this is more the moisture component. Foods in the diet like small cold water oily fish, salmon, of course, on the West Coast, nuts, seeds, avocado, coconut, olives are all good sources of those healthy fats, the omega-3 essential fatty acids that we can't produce ourselves. The next thing I'm going to talk about is the thymus, or rather, I'm going to teach the Thymus Thump. This is also known as the happiness point in some circles, and it has the potential to do a lot more than just boost your immune system. As mentioned in part 1, flight or fight mode, being in sympathetic dominance, can really decrease our body's secretions of things like mucus, tears, and saliva. And the thymus is where white blood cells, called T lymphocytes or simply T cells, mature. T cells help destroy infectious or even cancerous cells, and it supports other organs of the immune system as well. So tapping on this point can help neutralize that negative energy as well as negative thoughts that are often present when we're in fight or flight, and it can have a calming effect, plus even restore energy. So while it's called a thump, you can either thump, tap, or scratch. So again, a review of the anatomy, the spot we're looking for is about 2 inches below our collarbone, on top of our breastbone or sternum. And you'll just be tapping, or sorry, that would be more like a thump, tap, or even a little scratch. And you don't need to do this for long, about 15 to 30 seconds. And there's a lot of overlap with the Mind Gem move that I showed last time, and I'll just review this quickly for those who weren't in attendance. This posture is called cross and touch at the thymus. So you'll cone your hands and get those fingertips, the pads ready, and just cross on either side of the thymus. So like this for about 12 seconds, and then you'll change directions. And this maneuver is designed to clear shock, anxiety, and self-destructive behavior. Again, these are things that can be present when we're in that flight or fight and stressed. Moving on to the third section of the talk, we're going to move into a digestive section now. So the gastric mucosa, the mucous membranes lining our gastrointestinal tract, so primarily the stomach as well as the intestines, secretes over a liter, upwards of 1.5 liters of gastric juice a day. And this gastric juice is a mixture of water, hydrochloric acid, which is very, very acidic, electrolyte salts. I've been sipping on a little homemade electrolyte blend, and proteases, such as pepsin. Pepsin is the main digestive enzyme in the stomach, and it helps break down proteins into smaller units like polypeptides and amino acids. But it's also smart enough to know to leave the body's own proteins alone, our own structural proteins. And the last thing that gastric juice contains is mucus. I hope your appreciation for mucus is growing and the word causes less of a strong yuck reflex. I'm going to infuse this talk with as many mentions of mucus as possible. gastric juice helps dissolve food particles and initiates the digestion of proteins. This produces a mixture called chyme, like thyme with a C, chyme, C-H-Y-M-E. This is a semi-solid liquid mass which then flows to the small intestine where the majority of absorption takes place. So protein digestion starts in the stomach, but most of our nutrient absorption actually takes place later on in the digestive tract, the small intestine, not in the stomach. Like those selective proteases, the pepsin that breaks down proteins, the lumen or the inside of the stomach also has some intelligence in that it is resistant to that really acidic hydrochloric acid in the digestive juices. The stomach membrane is protected by lipid proteins. So that sits on top of the epithelial cells, or the gastric mucosa, to protect it from the really acidic contents in there. Now, the three phases of digestion include the cephalic, the gastric or stomach, and the intestinal phases. And there's some overlap between the neural, so the brain and nervous system related response, and the humoral pathways. So the neural component is just the engagement of our senses responding to stimuli. So the look, the smell, the taste of food. Hopefully there isn't any sound, except for maybe some happy slurping from your dinner mates. Hopefully nothing is growling back at you from your dinner plate. And touch. So when food actually makes contact in our mouth, and when our stomachs grow to accommodate contents. The humoral pathway has to do with humors or bodily fluids. It's the release of bodily fluids accompanying an immune response, so the release of antibodies when we're ingesting things that are foreign. Foreign as in like not a part of our body. Our bodies will detect that. It doesn't belong, but that's fine as long as it stays where it's supposed to in our digestive tract. So going into detail of each of these three phases of digestion, the first one being the cephalic. I mentioned that it's engagement of our senses, simply even thinking about food or smelling something. And this is mediated by the 10th cranial nerve, the vagus nerve, which you can actually access through the outside of your ear. And this is a popular auricular or ear acupuncture point called ear shen men. So in this triangular cone, just at the beginning of it, I'll include a diagram in the summary so that you can pinpoint this for yourself. This point, ear shen men, is also nicknamed the heavenly gate. And that relates to it being the auricular branch of the vagus nerve. It's the only point in the body where you can make contact with it. So it's associated with calm, focus, and even pain relief. You can use it like a little reset button. And there are so many different helpful ear acupuncture, or in your case, acupressure points in the ear. And something I've noticed is the increasing trend of having multiple piercings in your ears. And it's a little controversial amongst acupuncturists because it's thought that the scar tissue that forms around piercings may disrupt the meridian flow of qi, and cause maybe an unwanted energetic reaction by constantly stimulating that point. And you can even imagine, even if it heals and things return to normal, because you have that extra bit of jewelry sticking out there, when you're wearing a form-fitting hat or something snug over your ears, you're stimulating that point and drawing continuous attention to it when it may not be fitting of the situation. The next phase of digestion is the gastric phase. This is where gastrin is released into the bloodstream. And gastrin is a hormone that stimulates further secretion of gastric juices. The acidity of the gastric juices, namely from the hydrochloric acid, is buffered by proteins. And the acidity stays elevated throughout the gastric phase of digestion due to the continuous breakdown of proteins and the stretching reflex of the stomach. Once food leaves the stomach, it enters the intestines. And I mentioned already that the digestion of proteins starts in the stomach, but it is also able to absorb a few other substances. Simple things like glucose, which is your body's preferred fuel source. Simple sugars, amino acids, so those are individual building blocks of proteins, and some fat-soluble substances as well. So someone who has really sensitive digestion, who has developed really low tolerance to food, might be on something known as an elemental diet, which is just everything essential that you need and nothing else. So it often does contain these things that I mentioned, like the amino acids and the simple sugars, that doesn't take a lot of digestive prowess to break down. And an example of an amino acid that's particularly beneficial to mucous membranes, especially of the gut, the gastric mucosa, is something like L-glutamine. Now, it's rare to be deficient in this amino acid because it is a non-essential amino acid, meaning that our body can synthesize it itself. We don't need to get it from food. However, under certain situations, it can be beneficial to supplement with it. So not only does it boost immune cell activity in the gut, but it can also prevent inflammation and infection, as well as have a soothing effect. It also happens to be used in energy production. So not surprisingly, it is a popular supplement in the fitness industry. Further, in terms of sports nutrition, it can support muscle glycogen stores. So that's the stored glucose that you rely on when you've been exercising for a long time. And it also supports growth hormone production and speeds recovery of sore muscles, as well as preserves muscle tissue structure itself and is generally good at wound healing. So it will fix those micro tears in your muscles that develop when you are lifting weights, but also help fix that gastric mucosa if there's been any damage to it, including ulceration. And again, the mucous membranes in the digestive tract help block bacterial access through physically creating a mucus barrier, and then also within the mucus, it's this chemical soup that has different enzymes and things like defensins that help neutralize um, the microbes that we don't want. And then lastly, the third phase of digestion, the intestinal phase. This phase is not as well understood. It's controlled by a mixture of inhibitory and stimulatory processes, so kind of on and off switches, which really go beyond the scope of the master class that I've planned today. This is already a bit of a mixed bag. So I'm also going to save a discussion of leaky gut syndrome, which I alluded to at the end of my last talk, and dedicate a whole talk to it itself in the future. I just can't do it justice along with everything else that I'd like to cover in the last 15 minutes or so. So in this time, I want to talk about collagen, bone broth, these types of gut healing foods that some of you may have heard of. And the mucous membrane is actually associated with type 4 collagen. And some purported sources include egg whites. Some sources say the membrane lining the eggshells as well as just any high protein foods. There are, I think it's 25 or 28 even, different types of collagen that exist in the body, but primarily the top 5 collagen, so collagen type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are the ones that most of our structures rely on. Type 4 is more associated, most abundant in mucous membranes, however, and it also is one that's harder to find through the diet. One of the reasons why egg whites might be good for type 4 collagen is that it's high in the amino acid proline. Glycine, proline, and hydroxyproline are all required in ample amounts to synthesize collagen. Vitamin C is also involved in the creation of collagen through a process called hydroxylation. And if you remember from chemistry class, a hydroxyl group is the OH group. So it adds, the vitamin C adds a hydroxyl group in the collagen synthesis process. And earlier I mentioned that eggshell membranes might be another kind of niche source, and I'm still trying to find proper evidence for this, as some other sources suggest that eggshell is predominantly type 1s, 5, and 10. If that's the case, we don't need to look to something like eggshells. Type 1 collagen is the most abundant collagen in our bodies, and it can be found in much more common sources, such as marine source collagen. So that's like fish skins in particular, which happens to be the most bioavailable type of collagen. It's 1.5 times as bioavailable or absorbable than other animal-based collagen sources. Type 1, to a lesser extent, is also found in pigs and cows. And for those who are vegetarians or vegans, I haven't forgotten about you. There's also options. So through the magic of technology, we are now able to have access to vegan collagen from genetically modified organisms. So human genes that code for collagen have been spliced into the genetic structure of yeast and bacteria so that they themselves start producing the building blocks of human collagen. Isn't that crazy? And then pepsin is added to these building blocks to give it the proper structure to really mimic human collagen. For those of you who joined earlier, I mentioned pepsin in the context of the 3 phases of digestion. So it is a protease or a protein-specific digestive enzyme, and it's secreted during the gastric phase and activated in the presence of that acidic hydrochloric acid or low pH. So type 4 collagen, I mentioned egg whites, potentially membranes of eggshells, but it's very hard to find as a supplement. Anyhow, I will try to straighten out the facts and give kind of a final summary in the write-up for this article, where in terms of where you can try to get more of the type 4 collagen that's really beneficial for skin moisture and mucous membranes. Although we have the technology to make vegan sourced collagen, it does seem pretty hard to find and rather pricey. So you might look for something like a collagen boosting supplement. So instead of buying something that's like collagen peptides, this one just happens to have hydrolyzed bovine, so cow collagen. That's hormone fed and grass fed, preferably. You would be taking a supplement that contains everything to help your body make its own collagen. So these types of collagen boosting supplements often have things like vitamin C, zinc, and different plant extracts. And these actually happen to be helpful to the immune system in and of themselves. This isn't just a talk on collagen and how to get it, but really how to stimulate your first line of immune defense. So by taking these collagen boosters, there are immune beneficial ingredients, but also you're supporting collagen production. And even simpler than the collagen boosting supplement would be like an amino acid blend or even vegan protein powder for those of you who can't have the actual collagen itself. Dietary sources are foods that are rich in the amino acids that are necessary for our body to form collagen. As mentioned already, glycine, proline, also lysine is one of the more prominent ones. And you may have heard of this amino acid from Dr. Karen's talk on cold sores. Beans and legumes, including soy products, nuts, and seeds, essentially vegan protein sources, are also appropriate if you can't have animal-based protein for collagen production, as well as those vitamin C rich foods to support hydroxylation. One of my favorite vegetables these days is okra. You may be familiar with it through Asian cuisine. It's also popular down south in the US, fried okra. So it is full of vitamin C and A, and also a bit bitter too. The bitterness contributes to stimulating the cephalic phase of digestion, and also bitters, when we taste them, they stimulate as well the gastric phase by stimulating the secretion of gastric juices. For those of you who have ever prepared okra or even eating it, you'll know about that unique sliminess. And doesn't it remind you a lot of mucus? Also, things like horsetail gymnostema. This is an herb that Dr. Jeff loves, and he goes into detail about it as an adaptogenic herb in one of his talks, which I'll link to, as well as Ayurvedic herbs like gotu kola and ashwagandha. These are also beneficial for collagen, and herbs don't just do one thing. They have additional benefits, like with gotu kola and ashwagandha. What comes to mind is boosting mental and physical performance and supporting stress. So type 4 collagen is found primarily in the basement membrane. This is the loose connective tissue that our epithelial cells, so whether that's mucous membrane or skin, sits on top of. This is really rich in type 4 collagen. I mentioned the eggshells, and as a fun idea, I thought I'd just talk about how you can use them, because egg whites, is something that normally people consume, but eggshells, how do you incorporate those into your diet if they are truly a good source of collagen? Earlier this year, I made an eggshell tea for my plants. It's a good source of minerals like calcium. And for your body, I would recommend that you invest in organic free-range eggs, which have a better nutrient profile, both when you ingest the white and the yolk, but also when you're using the membrane and shell. So make sure just to rinse out the shell really well, being careful not to disrupt the membrane. And if, as you rub it with your hands, you'll feel that it's quite silky and smooth and delicate. And just let them air dry. I've actually been collecting eggshells in preparation for doing this myself. And then if you already have a stockpile, say you were making a frittata or cake and you had a lot of eggshells at once, you could get right into making the eggshell tea. But I'm going to try to make a concentrate. So I was waiting till I had about 8 clean and dry eggshells, and then you would crush it up and just pour over a liter of freshly boiled water, and then add a little bit of acid. So this could be vinegar or lemon juice. And I always do this when I'm making something like bone broth, just to help extract the minerals from the bones. So this is the same idea with the shells, to help leach out all the minerals. And then just allow it to cool, your solution, to a comfortable temperature, and then filter it, and then add a tablespoon or so of this concentrate to a glass of water, and then just take it as you like. You can't really overdo it in this form, and it doesn't taste like anything, so you could even add it to smoothies or your food. And in all this talk of eggshells, I'll quickly just tell a little story about one of my eclectic aunts. Whenever I've been in her kitchen, she saves eggshells, and she loves applying the residual egg white because you know how it never comes out completely clean. She hates wasting, and she'll just right away apply it to her skin as like a facial. And she loves it, and I always thought it was a little bit wacky, but now that I know more about where collagen comes from, it makes total sense that you would use the egg white, which we've heard is high in proline, which is a building block of collagen. Why that egg white would be beneficial to apply to the face. And if anyone is raising their eyebrows, like I did once, because you know eggs, raw eggs, salmonella, or the potential. The salmonella comes actually from when they're being hatched. Before the eggshell has fully calcified, it can get trapped inside from the hen. So when you're applying externally, it's not so much of an issue, but when you're ingesting it, because you're pouring on that hot, boiled water, it's high enough to kill the salmonella, so you don't need to worry. And earlier when I showed the supplement of the collagen peptides, I did mention that it was hydrolyzed, and most high quality collagen supplements are hydrolyzed, and that just means that the collagen has been pre-broken down to make it more absorbable. So you can get hydrolyzed, pork or beef collagen, hydrolyzed fish protein, things like salmon skin, pork skin. When you're supporting your own skin, the easiest thing, the equivalent would be an animal source, I guess the closest to our own, because it's kind of like a whole food supplement in that it contains everything naturally that would be found in the skin or mucous membrane already. And when I say pork skins, I don't mean pork rinds. So all of this is to say, keep your skin well nourished with healthy fats and plenty of water, lotion as needed when you're out and about and sanitizing away. Remember to deep breathe and optimize the circulation of whey or defensive qi from the lung throughout the body. Do the thymus thump, tap, or scratch. Consider supplementing with things like L-glutamine and increasing your consumption of protein-rich foods, including egg whites, if there's no allergy. And maybe if you're feeling adventurous, make use of the shell and especially that membrane on the inside. And when you're buying collagen or collagen supplements, just check that they're hydrolyzed to maximize the absorption because it's pre-broken down for your body. And that's all I wanted to share in this talk on strengthening your first line of immune defense, nourishing your skin and mucous membranes. If anything is unclear and you didn't get a chance to check out part 1 of this talk from Tuesday, have a look. And as always, I'm open for questions throughout the talk, and at the end, if there's anything that you're still wondering about or would like more information on, I am yours. Okay. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your sunny Sunday afternoon.